Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch, recorded on Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. Here's what I'm keeping my eye on: lake effect snows again. We'll take a review of what's happened and what's likely to happen across that area of the United States. The fire weather in California is on everyone's mind, and I think I can see a break that will help containment and possibly even help with the initiation of new fires. Southeast rains, this is later in the week, but a pretty good soaking expected through portions of the southeastern U.S. We're looking at a cold pattern now, a warming trend. It's going to be kind of interesting to watch the graph on this, and then bitter cold diving right into polar express again in the central U.S. especially. And is there another winter storm? Just because we have Arctic air coming in, does that always imply we're going to get a winter storm because the air is there? Well, it certainly is a player in the game, but it doesn't always follow we're going to get a winter storm, and I'll give you my insight on that coming up. Here is the visible satellite loop late on this Tuesday morning, and a couple of features are pretty obvious. You can still see the snows laid down here. I'll show you what the coverage for the United States is here in just a second. Still offshore flow, and this is a topic that applies to California too, by the way. Offshore flow is when the wind blows from land out over, usually we're talking about the oceans, but it could be a lake too. And so that has continued. High clouds in Texas. Most of the West is in fair weather conditions. Of course, everybody's focusing on the LA area. It's chilly there. The weather, except for the wind, is not bad. Let's take a look at the 500 millibar flow on top of that. This is still a very active pattern with extremely strong winds here being driven by huge temperature contrast. This generally is a long wave, meaning that if you look at the entire globe, that this depression in the flow is pretty big. And then within that, you have shorter waves like this one here, and even a cutoff low way off this California coast. That's good. Now, last week, there was a much stronger low than that centered right here. That's what led to that last snow. And that was really producing a large temperature gradient, and it was a contributing factor to the extreme wind gusts that they saw when this whole fire tragedy started a week ago. Let's just kind of take things one at a time here. Let's go and take a look at the northeastern U.S. and the lake effect snows, which you can always tag because they're these very thin little snake-like bands, and the fetch of the wind is off the long part of both Lakes Erie and Ontario, so that tends to maximize the amount of moisture you can pick up. So the fetch is what that's called. So these bands are very particular about where they lay down snow, and I'll take a look at that here in just a second. We have a mixture of either lake effect snow warnings here from just south of Buffalo, encompassing most of western tip of New York State, also the eastern tip of Lake Ontario under a lake effect snow warning, and as usual, winter weather advisories kind of surround that and kind of dominate the area around the lake effect snow bands in Michigan. So let's take a look at reported snowfall. We'll kind of zoom into the Buffalo area first, where, you know, a lot of areas in blue there, 4 or 5 inch totals, but the highlights are those 6 inch totals, 8 inch totals that you're seeing that I'm highlighting there, 10 inch total just to the southwest of Buffalo. And then we move up to the Lake Ontario portion of that, 18 inches at Martinsburg, 17 inches just south there. But you go to the next county south, 2 inches. Again, that's so typical of lake effect snows, and they also extend pretty far sometimes, especially on long fetches. This is Albany, not seeing as much snow, but 1 to 2 inch totals from the lake effect snow bands as they breach there. And here we're just looking at the area of northeastern Ohio, just east of Cleveland, and the Erie area. 2 to 4 inch totals, very common in that part of the world. This is, by the way, snow reported within the last 24 hours. On the surface map, we have a high pressure system, again, centered over North and South Dakota, Minnesota intersecting point there. All these readings up here are sub-zero right now. Actually, that line didn't go far enough south. Here we go. Sub-zero right here, and then single digits, and then eventually teens and 20s to get it down to Missouri, Kansas, and parts of Illinois. This latest weather system has occluded. Now, normally under these conditions, we would see a return to winds that would actually be out of the southeast or south that would discourage lake effect snows on the U.S. side of the lakes. But in this case, the fetch of the winds, as you saw, is more due from west to east. This will change briefly and then go right back to, lake effect snow favorable conditions for the next several days. Let's switch gears completely. Now, Los Angeles in the center of your screen, red flag warnings and high wind warnings. Red flag warnings are specifically for outdoor burning risks, and high wind warnings are exactly how they sound. Wind gusts that could reach levels where you need to be concerned. And they issue high wind warnings even if there isn't a fire danger. So actually the red flag warning is in effect basically wherever you see the high wind warnings. It might be a little confusing, but anything you see that's colored on that map is bad, basically, for fire danger. Let's take a look at the high resolution model data. This is really just for the next 18 hours. And what you'll see, don't pay so much attention to the actual winds reported at the cities on this map, but look at the colors here, and you'll see in the next couple of hours here, north of LA, that yellow color pops up. That's 50 to 60, maybe 70 mile per hour winds that are happening. If it's the purplish color, it's at least a 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gust. So still some major concerns in the mountains north of Los Angeles. This and also today extending more to the around to the Oxford area, more to the west of Los Angeles. So that's bad for containment. Anything that pops up new is going to require extra attention. But here, let me tell you why there's some good news in the future. This is the GFS model, the longer range model for the next 5 days. Browns are dry air, green is moist air, and the barbs on there are the wind direction generally. So as I mentioned earlier, wind that blows from land to sea is an offshore wind, and that is what causes problems, because not only is the wind coming down off the mountains and you get this Bernoulli channeling effect that causes the winds to gust even more, but it's also coming from the higher elevations of the Great Basin, and it's drying and warming and descending. Now, if we can reverse that in Los Angeles, make the green colors come back, those are dew points, by the way, and that's exactly what happens toward the end of this loop, which is this weekend, then that's good, because you're by dew points going up, that means your relative humidities will rise and the winds will be onshore, coming from sea to land. Huge difference, and is needed badly. And everything I'm seeing so far seems to support the idea that that will be what the forecast trend is for the next 5 days. So good news. Snow cover, 47% of the country covered in snow on January 14th. And that was well above 50 just a couple of days ago. So the edges of those two storms and others before that are starting to wear off just a little bit. I don't see anything immediately in the next 5 days that's going to add significantly to that. There's already snow cover in the Great Lakes states, so we're not going to make that map any bigger. But maybe next week there might be something brewing. Let's talk a little bit about that. So here's Friday's weather map. So here we go. This is actually a warm wind blowing here. So anything that's in the triangle between the cold front and the warm front is a warmer pattern. High pressure sitting over Florida, very cold down there. A low pressure system and another shot of cold air, two of them actually developing here on Friday. We move ahead to Saturday, and this is a wet weather system. I'll show you that in a minute. Here comes the cold air, 1 and 2. And then, like I said, is there an intersection point in this area here where there's enough cold air to convert some of that over to snow? Maybe. I wouldn't call it a storm, but certainly more winter precipitation is possible with that pattern. And then on Sunday, big old high, the center of which by Sunday is not even in the U.S. yet. It's still centered off map. And this is just nasty northwest winds. I haven't mentioned it. Well, I think I did mention it on the channel before. I'm from Springfield, Missouri, so the Chiefs play on Saturday. So that was the start of this push. On Sunday, it gets even more blustery in the Midwest and the Central Plains. Here's the total precipitation. I was telling you about that. So Alabama, Pensacola, Florida, Tallahassee, a lot of Georgia, 2 to 3 inch totals probably in that area Friday and Saturday. And again, the question is, this is total precip. So even if this were snow, this would be the melted down forecast. So the question is, again, on the northern edge of this, I don't think the timing is going to work out real well, because I think this precipitation will be laid down before the temperatures really have a chance to plummet there. So I don't think there's a good intersection, but we are still a few days away from that. So that's one thing we need to be keeping an eye on. Here is Fargo, North Dakota's temperature forecast. Talk about kind of a psycho weather pattern. So we go from temperatures today well below zero, with a high today only expected around 0. Fargo is on the border between Minnesota and the Dakotas. And then we take a 2-day kind of break there where temperatures actually get above freezing. That's that warmer pattern I was just showing you. And then it just plummets. And we have an extended cold period here where readings are going to go down to minus 20 or colder in the morning, and highs won't get above maybe minus 10 maybe on Sunday, but certainly on Monday and Tuesday, and then maybe some relief toward the end. And this is getting out quite a far into the future, so I'm not sure exactly how that's going to go. But look at some of these forecast low temperatures from the Weather Service. We're looking at minus 24. I think that's Bismarck, or close enough anyway. And minus 12, it looks like, in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The freezing line from the Central Carolinas to southern Mississippi and Alabama and southern Texas. So pretty cold air. The 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, high probability, 80% chance of below normal temperatures in this bullseye here. But just about all of the lower 48 is forecast to be below normal in that 6 to 10 day period. And then finally, what's going on with storms? Does it always follow that Arctic air leads to heavy snows or ice? No, not necessarily. It depends on the weather pattern. But I will say, and this is really fantasy land, you need to know, this is a blended model. It helps, and this is 8 days from now. But what you'd be looking at is where the cold air penetrates, which is here, and any storm track that can develop. That's just kind of, you don't really need to be much of a forecaster to figure out that's a possibility. The models are supporting that, but it's way too early to make a forecast regarding that. I will say, though, in my experience, that this corridor right here would be the favorite for that any development next week, with, again, that slight chance that as the next push of cold air comes in, there could be some winter precipitation along the edge of that as well. Well, that wraps it up for today. Remember to like the video and also to subscribe to the channel. I have a lot of weather content. I am a meteorologist, but I also have a lot of other interests and hobbies, and I hope you like those as well. See you in the next video.